Coming up on Great Gardening, some urban gardeners are planting beyond their yards and taking it to the street. More on that and expert advice for northern growers next on Great Gardening.
We're like producing a serious amount of food.
We hope to be able to provide food for the community.
I love sharing the garden with others.
You can do a lot of fun things with broccoli.
All of our students here are involved in gardening.
It has a sign on the door that says My Happy Place, and it really is.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish, coming to you from my home as we continue to shelter in place due to COVID-19. And joining me from their homes are horticulturist and educator Bob Olin and garden professional Deb Burns-Erickson. Thank you so much for joining me to help keep folks informed about gardening. It's, a healthy pastime that is even more important during these times.
I couldn't have said it better. I think it's going to be a big gardening season. Great weather, wouldn't you agree, Deb? And we're going to get off to a start, and people will need it more this year than ever, I think.
It seems to be out in social media a lot, too, that people are asking and they're really trying to get involved earlier than ever.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it is something that we're all anxious to do. You can tell by the questions we've been getting. We've collected a number of questions from across the region that came in earlier via email. Please keep those questions coming. You can send them to ask@wdse.org, and you'll see that address at the bottom of the screen throughout parts of the show. Now here's an uplifting sign of the season. We got this photo of crocuses popping out from Tom Blumenberg in Hayward, who calls it a beautiful sign of spring, and it sure is. Crocuses, daffodils, other early blooms are making their appearance right now. What are you guys seeing out there?
I'm seeing the same thing. They're jumping pretty quickly. We're getting warmer temperatures, and little envious of Hayward. I think they had some 60 or 65 degree days there, so I think that's springtime weather for sure.
Yeah. Deb, are you seeing things come out? I know the rhubarb's been coming out, and lots of other things, I think, too, at this point.
Yep, lots of this wind drying things out. It's been really nice to get rid of a lot of the extra water that we have, too.
Right. There have been some nice days to get out and do cleanup in our yards and gardens, for sure. Okay, well, last summer we visited a vegetable garden in Duluth, planted in a unique location on the Boulevard.
Hello, I'm Barb Bakri. We're in the Kenwood neighborhood, and this is my Boulevard garden. There was one of those lovely maple trees right here, a Boulevard maple tree, and someone came along at the angle here and hit it. All this sunlight was hard to refuse, and that's really the best advantage of having the garden here is almost all-day sunlight. Tomatoes do wonderfully with all the sun and the heat. It's fun to work out here because you see neighbors. It's like the old front porch where you used to sit and talk to the neighbors. Really enjoy that. And then the sun is the other advantage. People have always wondered what the plows will do. They really haven't done much damage. It's my responsibility, not theirs. The salt. I've never had a problem with the salt that I know of. I don't know if I'm ignoring it or denying it, but so far it seems the plants seem to thrive despite the salt. It's garden green compost, right? And I add one bag to each raised bed every year and dig it in and then plant again, and that seems to do the trick. It's confined and you don't walk on it. You can plant it more intensely. Onions are around the edge, hopefully to deter the deer from munching on the tomatoes. They do that occasionally. Some herbs are sprinkled in, another broccoli and kale down below, and some herbs down there too, chives, tarragon, some perennial herbs as well as some annual herbs. Cucumbers have done really well, especially on this support here. I put carrots around them and some parsnips. And borage is great for attracting the bees. You can see that they love the borage, and plants that the deer like, the beans and the peas and the lettuce and the beets, and even some carrots have moved in the back now that I have a fence back there.
All right, well, it's time now to get some questions to people, but I wanted to start by asking you guys, I know that there was some concerns about greenhouses opening up, and we had a couple questions already about that. Not, one specifically, will Burns Greenhouse be open this year? So tell us what the status is now with this stay-at-home order and sheltering in place with COVID-19. It's changed some things.
For us, I mean, we plan on opening April 30th and proceeding with more caution and more safety and hand washing stations, a drive-through. We have over 40,000 square feet though, so we're fortunate. We have a lot of space to get a lot of people in. But we're all going to have to do our part to keep everyone safe and healthy and get them into the vegetables and into the garden, and just help them out and keep safe.
And Bob, I know you said that you always knew greenhouses were an essential business.
Well, we were concerned for a while there because they were restricted, and not being able to move through the greenhouse and select plants would have been very difficult. So I think now we have a reasonable provision where people can access them and just use good common social distancing. I do think there are going to be some smaller greenhouses that are going to have to be a little careful how they restrict and distribute plants, and I'm sure that all the customers will be aware of that and just use a little bit of common sense to go along with this. But the plants are going to be out there, they're going to be available for people, so that's just a little change in thought there, which is really pretty essential to everybody involved in the industry.
Great. Okay, well, let's get to some of these questions that were emailed in. And one is about, buying bedding plants or planting from seed. And Tony wants to know about if he does want to plant from seed, if he still has time to start cabbage, broccoli, squash, and any advice about containers and depth of seed and moisture. Bob, I know that's a lot to take on, but...
Yeah, of course. I'll let you follow up on this, Deb, but starting from seed is not difficult. It's growing the plants out that can be a little bit of a challenge, where you need good light and you need good container space. Starting from seed is not too late. As a matter of fact, it'd be very early for all the vine crops. You want to look at, mid-May actually to start some of those out for transplanting, but certainly you could be starting with the cabbage family. Big thing is just sterile media to get things started, about 1/4 of an inch. Not difficult, keeping the seed moist. They do have to be lifted and they have to be transplanted. And once they're transplanted, then they have to be grown out, because if you don't have good light, they will get long and leggy and they won't be a quality plant. Any other thoughts, Deb?
Absolutely the same thing. It's just a lot of times everything gets too crowded. It gets too leggy. It's fighting for sunlight. So you can even direct seed into small containers. Like this is tomatoes, and we started these probably 3 weeks ago, maybe. And they're getting a little tight, so we'll have to take these apart too. But it helps, right, with light, like you said, Bob. And also, if you put a fan on these things to get them to toughen up and to keep them dry, and you can kind of hold them. If you've already started them and they're starting to struggle, you can, toughen them up a bit and hold them a little bit longer, running them a little bit hard.
That's good. I think, Deb, again, if I might follow up with that, I think that we want a high quality plant. We don't want to have them sit too long. We don't want them too leggy. We don't want them sitting inside waiting until that last frost-free date, because this can actually harden them off to the point where it takes them quite a while to get established. So look for the homeowner delaying planting, and any time from here on out, I think you can do a lot of seeding except for the vine crops. And then do the best you can with available light that you have. And then You might even want to move them out when it seems appropriate and be prepared to cover if there's the possibility of any kind of frost.
Right. Especially the cold crop, you could definitely be doing that with the cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower.
I might just say cauliflower is the one that's super sensitive and really won't take that flower head, really won't take cooler temperatures, but the others are going to be just fine. Cauliflower, you want to delay transplanting, almost transplanting them out when you be putting your tomatoes in the ground.
I have a follow-up question, guys, from Rosemary in rural Babbitt, who says, what temperature should I have in my greenhouse for tomatoes and peppers to germinate?
Well, germinating temperatures are going to be warmer, really, and that's the key, 70 plus. Oftentimes you'll use heat mats just to get that soil medium that warm. You may not want to maintain temperatures that warm. You're around maybe even warmer during the day than that. You might have to control temperature, but I think 70 is a good germinating temperature. What are your thoughts, Deb?
Yep, that's what we do. We get it up to 70, and then we can back off once you're getting really good germination. But to get them to germinate, you really do need that temperature. It's critical.
Okay, I have a question from Steve, and I'm sure a lot of people have been dealing with this too. He said, most of the snow in my yard has melted. I'm still looking at some out here, but it won't be long. But he says that parts that he snowblowed over the lawn heaved up as much as a foot, and he's wondering if there's anything you can do to get that level to come down on the lawn, or if you just need to leave it and let it come on its own.
Well, you can let it settle down. I'm assuming he's got some heaving in the sod there. Sometimes you just have to work with it a little shovel work, and that can be done. He's got a week or so here, and then he can start that kind of a process.
Our garden tour this week takes us to Superior, where structure and some wild elements create an inviting landscape.
My name is Gary Banker, and this is Central Park, Wisconsin, and welcome to our garden. I started gardening when I was a kid. As I always say, I got my love of gardening from my father, and I got my know-how from Mrs. Ellison, who was our next-door neighbor. When we moved here, with all the gardens, I just decided, we've got nothing but lawn. And I get tired of mowing the lawn, so I thought, I'll just put a couple gardens in. I did that so I didn't have so much lawn to mow. And needless to say, yeah, I've got less lawn and more garden. And my dad was he was the straight line, everything in order, start small, work to tall. No, not straight lines. I like curve, I like natural. Let it enjoy the space that it's in. The echinacea that you see there, and then the other one, St. Martin's Cross, all that came in from the birds, and I just let it grow where it is. This site was the site of the old bishop's house from Superior. And this was actually part of his garden. That Russian olive that you see there, that's what the bishop had planted. You can see it's quite old, and it's not happy. I keep on feeding it, and I'm hoping that it will last. But even once it goes, I'm not taking the tree down. I'm going to take off some of the smaller branches. I love the structural element of it. And we have the delphinium and more Joe Pye. And then we have Lady in Red, the fern that goes all over. That's a fern. And I actually wintered that, overwintered it in the house last year. With the clematis, I always plant 2 at a time, and sometimes I like to blend them, as you can see that I've done here, 2 different colors. Even if it were the same variety, I always plant 2. That just seems to give more of a boost, and they grow, I think, more vibrantly. The clematis. I love a clematis, so I try to put them wherever I can. For each one of the gardens that I have, I like to try to have a theme. If you look over there, you can see the children over there, so everything in there would be connected with children. Back over here, that garden has that has the Grecian figures in it. When I first put them out, all you can see is the statuary, and it looks like overkill. Then when things grow up, they seem to disappear, and it's fun to discover them. The gazebo, that was a Mother's Day gift that I bought for my wife a few years ago. And for the longest time it sat in the yard, and so I decided to put it on a patio. And then the daylilies, it's one solid daylily bed, so you will find early, mid, and late blooming daylilies. In fact, up until when the snow is just starting in, some of the daylilies are still blooming. So they're robust. It just creates a nice wall, if you will, for that room. The minute that things start to sprout, especially with the rabbits that we've got, I'm doing that with the rabbits. I get out right away, and as I said, I alternate between two different types of spray, so that they don't get accustomed to it. And this is the white garden. All the figurines are white, going along with the look in the garden. And the peonies just finished, and now the phlox will be coming out after the daisies and the daylilies. Everything that I envisioned when I was mowing the lawn and how it turned out are two different things. It's just sort of fascinating how they sort of grew, I hate that word organically, but they did.
All right, well, Gary has been a long time gardener and really active in the Superior area gardening community, and you can tell by the looks of his garden. It was really beautiful, so we want to thank him for that. We have more questions, guys. As I mentioned, people are really anxious to get gardening and to get some help with that. So I had a picture of a maple tree. We're going to show that now. It's a native maple in the yard. And Barb in rural Lake Nebagaman is asking, what might be causing small 1 by 2 inch pieces of bark to be peeled off many of the branches all the way up the tree? She doesn't see any sign of insects, but a lot of the bark's laying under the tree, and she started noticing it late this winter. Any ideas what that could be?
Well, it's kind of interesting, the fact that it's all the way up the tree. I'd go right back to maybe one of the big pileated woodpeckers that's doing that particular damage. Because obviously anything that's going to strip bark like that, bigger than a red squirrel, and obviously any mammal isn't going to be able to reach up there, a larger mammal like deer. So my first suspicion would be one of the larger woodpeckers.
All right, any other guesses, Deb?
I don't. No, I don't know at all. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a bummer because it looks so smooth where all the bark was taken off. It's kind of strange, but well, hopefully she'll find out what's doing that. Here's a question from Lee, who wants to add a native plant garden to his yard. What are good resources for plants and seeds? And Deb, I'm thinking that a lot of the greenhouses carry quote unquote native plants, right?
Right, and they're trying to push more cultivars even into natives, so you got to be a little bit careful. But there's that native one right in Hermantown, and they have really good seed selection. Which is that, Bob?
Boreal natives. And we've also got a couple of contractors that are kind of specializing in that. I believe shoreline natives out of Two Harbors. So for people that want advice or want plants or want actual installation, we do now have a couple of local resources that are doing a nice job in installing more native materials. There is definitely an interest in integrating, I think, some of the cultivated varieties for color with the native varieties for sustainability, durability, pollinator-friendly plants. So I think that combination is what I'm kind of calling the new perennial movement, where we're getting a mix of cultivated with native materials. But I think, Deb, you'll agree, this isn't prairie here, so we really have to be conscious of selecting plants that are appropriate for really our northern boreal forest area. These are the native plants that we want to plant in this area.
I'll just say that proven winners, you just got to watch them a little bit because they're pushing some of theirs as natives, and they're really not natives. So just, get a good source for information. Bob's totally right on the prairie and everything else.
And is it feasible for people to go out and collect seeds in the wild?
Oh, I think it definitely is, either collecting seed or even transplanting materials. I think you just have to be a little conscious of whose property it's on and so forth. So we don't want people out there with a spade just digging at will. but definitely they can be moved around carefully, and a lot of the native seed can be collected and started. It might be just a little late. That's usually done in the fall, and then they're carefully stratified, cold stratified, and then grown out oftentimes in the greenhouses, but definitely a possibility.
Great. Well, here's one I haven't heard before. It's from Carol, and she says, I have a case of fish oil capsules. Can I use them for added fertilizer for my tomatoes or other parts of the garden?
Well, without a doubt, fish oil does contain a high nitrogen component and could be used. It's probably a very expensive way to get a little nitrogen there, though. There are actually some fish emulsion formulas you can buy specifically for growing plants, but high nitrogen definitely could be used. You want to break the capsules down, I think, to make good use of them.
Now, more beautiful blooms in lovely landscapes from across the Northland. Here's this week's Grown Show. Bill Zebarth shares his gardens with friends and family in August during a garden party at his Piedmont Heights home, where he's been growing beautiful things for 23 years. The annual party began as a way to answer the many requests to visit and tour the gardens, and last year live music was added. Bill's yard is fronted with unique conifers. There are raised beds and ground beds overflowing with colorful blooms. Bursts of color behind picture frames and door frames, and so much more. Bill says he loves to add something new each year. If you have garden beauty to share and celebrate, send pictures of the joy in your landscape to greatgardening@wdse.org and let us show what you grow. Love to see those pictures that people send in. And you know, I've been noticing, you guys, that I think a lot of gardeners, since they have time, are going through a lot of their old pictures from last season and kind of just to get inspired for garden season. And so we've been benefiting from that. So just time for one more quick question. Diane in Cornucopia is looking for a recommendation for a small to mid-size, fast-growing ornamental tree. What do you think, Deb?
Oh, that's kind of tough because fast-growing and ornamental and keeping it small, that's really tough to do. I'm sure Bob knows exactly which one, but I was struggling with that question to figure out which one would be fast-growing and stay small.
Of course, I'm always a little biased, but I love the Japanese tree lilac that's going to stay small. And then, you know, any of the flowering crabs that are on semi-dwarf rootstocks are going to stay real small for you. So you got Cornucopia, she's zone 4, and she has plenty of different choices of beautiful flowering crabs. So flowering crabs, dwarfing or semi-dwarfing rootstocks, and Japanese tree lilac might be a couple of good sources.
All right, I just got one of those myself and I'm really anxious to see how it does. Reminder that our website has updates and a lot of episodes of Great Gardening to check out. We hope that you follow our Instagram page as well, and keep those questions coming in via email. Again, it's ask@greatgardening.org. Well, there are signs of spring and new life all around us now. We encourage everyone to get out and garden. And a huge thank you to Bob Olin and Deb Burns Erickson for sharing your expertise. Thanks, you guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you remotely. Looking forward to seeing everybody in person again.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll see you again next week. But from all of us at Great Gardening, thanks for watching and enjoy the garden.
Funding for Great Gardening is brought to you by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.